My name is Mark, and the events of one fateful night in November 2019 still haunt me. It was supposed to be a simple dinner with friends, but what unfolded was a nightmare I could never have imagined. My wife, Lisa, and I had invited our closest friends over for a dinner party at our new house. It was a beautiful old Victorian home we had recently purchased, and we were excited to show it off. The evening started off perfectly. The house was warm and inviting, the table was set with our finest china, and the aroma of a home-cooked meal filled the air. Our guests arrived right on time. There was Sarah and her husband, Tom, and our other friends, James and Emily. We laughed and chatted, sharing stories and enjoying the delicious food Lisa had prepared. The conversation flowed easily, and the wine added to the merriment. As the evening wore on, the atmosphere grew more intimate. We moved to the living room, where a fire crackled in the fireplace, casting a cozy glow over the room. It was then that the doorbell rang. We weren't expecting anyone else, and a sense of unease washed over me. I answered the door to find a man standing on the porch. He was tall and gaunt, with pale skin and hollow eyes. He wore a dark, old-fashioned suit that seemed out of place in the modern world. He smiled, but there was something off about it. Something sinister. "Good evening," he said in a voice that sent chills down my spine. "I'm terribly sorry to intrude, but my car broke down nearby. May I use your phone to call for assistance?" I hesitated, feeling an inexplicable sense of dread, but my manners got the better of me. "Of course, come in," I said, stepping aside. The man entered the house, and the temperature seemed to drop instantly. Our friends looked at him with curiosity and suspicion. Lisa offered him a seat, and he gratefully accepted. He made a brief call on his phone, then turned to us with that unsettling smile. "Thank you for your kindness," he said. "I hope I'm not interrupting." We assured him he wasn't, though the atmosphere had shifted. The man introduced himself as Mr. Blackwood and joined us in the living room. As we continued our conversation, it became clear that Mr. Blackwood was no ordinary guest. He had an uncanny ability to steer the conversation toward dark and disturbing topics. He spoke of ancient rituals, lost souls, and cursed objects with a depth of knowledge that was both fascinating and horrifying. His presence seemed to cast a shadow over the room, and I noticed our friends growing increasingly uneasy. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the fire in the fireplace sputtered. The room grew colder, and a sense of foreboding settled over us. Mr. Blackwood smiled, his eyes glinting with an unnatural light. "Do you believe in the supernatural?" he asked, his voice dripping with malevolence. Before anyone could answer, the lights went out completely, plunging the room into darkness. Panic set in as we fumbled for our phones and flashlights. When the lights finally came back on, Mr. Blackwood was gone. We searched the house frantically, but there was no sign of him. The front door was locked and the windows were all closed. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. The rest of the evening was a blur of fear and confusion. Our friends left hastily, and Lisa and I were left to grapple with the unsettling encounter. We couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible had happened, something beyond our understanding. The next morning, I found a note on the front porch written in elegant old-fashioned script. "Thank you for the hospitality. I'll be seeing you again." My name is Linda, and I always enjoyed hosting dinner parties. It was a way to bring friends together and create cherished memories. But one fateful evening in the fall of 2021, a dinner party turned into a nightmare that I will never forget. I had invited my closest friends, Alice, John, and Carol, for a cozy dinner at my home. The house, an old Victorian, had a charm that I loved, despite its age and creaks. I spent the day preparing a delicious meal, excited to share an evening of laughter and good food. As the evening began, everything seemed perfect. The table was beautifully set, the aroma of a roast filled the air, and the fireplace added a warm, inviting glow to the room. My friends arrived on time, and we quickly settled into a night of lively conversation and shared memories. The clock struck 8 p.m. and I brought out the main course. As we started eating, a sudden chill swept through the room. I dismissed it as a draft and continued with the meal. But as the night wore on, the atmosphere grew increasingly uneasy. Midway through dinner, the candles on the table flickered and went out simultaneously, plunging the room into darkness. Panic set in as we scrambled to relight them. Just as the flames flickered back to life, we heard a faint, rhythmic tapping coming from the dining room walls. John laughed nervously. "Must be the old house settling. Right, Linda?" I nodded, trying to hide my growing unease. But the tapping grew louder, more insistent, and seemed to come from all around us. The air grew colder, and an oppressive silence settled over the room. Alice suggested we move to the living room, hoping a change of scenery would lighten the mood. We gathered our plates and made our way to the adjacent room. As we sat down, the temperature continued to drop, and the flickering flames in the fireplace cast eerie shadows on the walls. Suddenly, Carol gasped and pointed to the old mirror above the mantel. Reflected in the glass was not just our group, but a shadowy figure standing behind us. We turned to look, but there was nothing there. The figure in the mirror remained, its eyes hollow and filled with a malevolent light. Panic surged through us as the tapping resumed, now louder and accompanied by whispered voices. The whispers grew into a chorus of unsettling murmurs, echoing through the room. The figure in the mirror seemed to move closer, its eyes fixed on us. Desperate to escape, we ran back to the dining room, but the door slammed shut, trapping us inside. The whispers intensified, and the walls seemed to close in around us. I felt a cold hand brush against my neck, and I screamed, my voice swallowed by the cacophony of voices. In a final act of desperation, John pushed against the door with all his strength, and it flew open. We stumbled out into the hallway, gasping for breath. The house fell silent, the oppressive presence lifted. We didn't waste any time. Grabbing our coats, we fled into the night, vowing never to return. The next day, I found out that the house had a dark history. A previous owner had dabbled in dark rituals, and it was said that their spirit still haunted the place.